Police and youths have clashed in the streets of Nairobi as the protest against proposed tax hikes continued in the capital on Tuesday, with police firing tear gas at the crowds of young demonstrators. Discontent over the spiraling cost of living has prompted demonstrations with a nationwide strike called. The mainly Gen Z-led rallies, which began last week, have taken President William Ruto's government by surprise. There was a heavy police presence early Tuesday in Nairobi's business district, with officers in full riot gear blocking access to Parliament. Elsewhere in the country, crowds were marching in the port city of Mombasa in the opposition bastion of Kisumu and Ruto's stronghold of Eldoret. According to rights groups, 2 people had died following Thursday's rallies in Nairobi. Now, joining me on the news to give more insight on happenings in Kenya is Declan Galvin, the Managing Director of Exigent Risk Advisory. Hello, Declan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right, so the number of demonstrators, seem to be increasing daily across the country. Now, in your opinion, what makes these protests unique?
Well, so even though you can't tell from kind of the very nice background that I have right where I am, what we're seeing across Nairobi is really at this point unprecedented, both in terms of turnout and the fact that these protesters are on the streets organically without the kind of payments that we typically see from politicians for people to rally. These protests are really, at this point, a whole of society endeavor, where we have the Law Society of Kenya issuing statements in support of protesters and their civil rights. We have religious leaders who have called for an end of police brutality and also supporting protesters. And we have, of course, has been reported widely, Gen Z and the youth who are using social media in a very elaborate manner in order to kind of coordinate and make sure that people are in the right places so that they can have their voices heard. So this is a very unique situation that has really kind of grappled the entire city and the country at this point.
All right, Declan. Now, the fact that you're on ground in Nairobi means that you've actually witnessed things as they unfold. Now, how intense and coordinated would you say it is? That's the protest.
So where I'm sitting right now in Karen, which is a very leafy, very nice upscale neighborhood, a couple of moments ago there was many hundreds of protesters just over my left shoulder moving down Gong Road. And we haven't seen civil unrest or protest activity in this part of the city for well over 10 years. And so it really kind of just highlights the scope in which people are participating. It's important to mention that these protests are peaceful. There's very few credible reports of protesters vandalizing or committing acts of violence. They are simply occupying streets and trying to make their voices heard. And it is impacting not just Nairobi, but in kind of the upcountry areas and other counties, whether that's Eldoret, whether that's Meru, Mombasa, certainly Kisumu. And this is very unique, again, given that this is mostly apolitical.
All right, Declan. Now, you did say that the protests are peaceful, but what do you have to say, concerning the reports that 2 people have already lost their lives in the course of the protests?
So these are some really kind of important drivers that are bringing people out to the streets today, and very likely in the days to come. So there were, as you mentioned, 2 deaths. These were, again, of peaceful protesters, and what we're seeing is clashes between demonstrators and state security services. And this is something that, when I was talking with demonstrators today, either by phone or in person, this is something that's also animating and driving their activities, just as much as the reported abductions last night by at least 6 influencers and activists overnight. So these are also key issues this morning. and afternoon.
All right, now you did say that, the protest is mostly spearheaded by young people, that's the Gen Zs. Now, despite these deaths and, everything going on, they are not relenting. What would you say is their driving force?
So just those two examples that I mentioned in terms of the abductions, the deaths, and really kind of broader, if we look at what's going on in Kenyan society, and this is the same, I think, globally, it's obvious that the international system that we all live and operate in is disconnected from the reality of everyday people. And Kenyans are not feeling the kinds of economic and social dividends that's necessary for them to have, daily sustenance or be able to achieve the goals that they want. And so this is more than just a finance bill. This is really the youth who feel oppressed. They feel disconnected from society. And they feel that the state is abusive. The finance bill is just kind of the trigger for a whole range of social and economic grievances.
All right. Now, Declan, just before we let you go, speaking of, daily sustenance, do you think that the protesters can maintain the momentum beyond this week, if the government does not give in to their demands?
It's hard to say. Historically, protests in Kenya that have been motivated by social or economic grievances have not sustained over a medium or long term. Protests that have focused on constitutional change, political reforms, those have had much more effectiveness, in Kenya over time. So we'll see. What we are observing right now in the National Assembly is politicians trying to ram through this finance bill. They see the finance bill as the trigger, and if they can just kind of get it over with, they're hoping that all of this will kind of burn out in the next few days. But given the scope and given the participation levels in this, I think that we need to consider the possibility that this will continue, at least in the near term.
All right, well, we'll keep our eyes on the ground and see how it goes. But thank you so much, Declan, for your time and also for speaking to us on this.
Thank you so much.